Are you addicted to romance like we are? Follow the journey of two soulmates in the sweet love story by Molly Summers. Sebastian's heart jumped into his throat as he was driving down Main Street 2 days later. Erica was perched on the top of a ladder, holding up a large wooden sign with the name of her party planning business while tourists weaved around her on the sidewalk. As he was pulling over, she wobbled, almost losing her grip on the sign and tumbling onto the concrete below. Putting the truck in park, he didn't even pause long enough to kill the engine before hopping out and hurrying to her. "What in the world are you doing?" he asked, and regretted it as she craned her neck to look down at him. The last thing she needed right now was a distraction. "My new sign came in today," she exclaimed happily. "Yeah, that's great. Come on down now. I need to get this hung up, and I'm not paying the company to do it." "Do you have any idea what they charge? Don't you remember when I told you to let me know if you need anything?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "I thought you were talking about issues with the property." "I was talking about anything. Starting a business is tough, and if you need help, I'm your man." He realized that he meant those words. She didn't know it yet, but he was hers. "So come down and let me do that for you," he insisted, holding up his arms to take the sign from her. It was surprisingly heavy, and he could hardly believe that she'd been holding it up by herself. Sebastian put the sign down and held out his hand as she made her way down the ladder. When she took it, he felt a tingle shoot up his arm. Her most innocent touches were electrifying. Once her feet were safely on the ground, Sebastian repositioned the ladder closer to the building and climbed up to the top with the sign tucked under one arm. Erica held the ladder for him and handed him the drill once he had the sign in place where she wanted it. He didn't have a level with him, so he lined the bottom edge of the sign up with the vinyl siding. When he was done, he stepped as far back as the wide sidewalk allowed to make sure it looked straight. "Isn't it fantastic?" Erica asked, practically glowing with happiness. "It makes everything feel so official." Sebastian couldn't help smiling. It was like her happiness was contagious. Or maybe he just liked seeing her like this. "Thanks so much for your help. You know what? I want to thank you. Join me for dinner. I was about to throw some burgers on the grill." "Oh, you don't have to." "I want to," she insisted. "Please." Sebastian had the strangest feeling that this woman would be nearly impossible to say no to. "Sure, that sounds great." He grabbed the ladder, folding it up. "I'll meet you upstairs after I get this put away." Taking the ladder and drill to the shed around back, he put it away. By the time he walked up the back steps, Erica had come out onto the deck and fired up the grill. There was wicker patio furniture set up and a citronella candle in the center of a glass-topped table. "Please take a seat," she said, gesturing to the chairs as she put some burgers on the grill. "You've really made this place your own. You settling in okay?" "Yes, it's starting to feel like home. Now I just have to get the downstairs ready for my grand opening." "Well, I hope you're ready for a lot of business," he said, "because everyone's going to want to check this place out." "Yeah, I hear I'm already the talk of the town. A woman from the welcoming committee came by a couple days ago." "Natalie?" he guessed. "Yeah, how did you know?" she asked, taking a seat at the table across from him. "She always volunteers to drop off the welcome baskets. Don't tell her I said this, but I think she likes to be the first person to get the scoop on the newcomers." She did seem like a bit of a gossip, Erica said, but he didn't detect any judgment in her voice. "Nat always has been," he said fondly. Erica looked at him curiously and, for just a second, he could have sworn he saw jealousy flash deep within her eyes, but he blinked and it was gone. He'd probably just imagined it. "I went to school with her. Her husband too." "Oh, I didn't realize she was married. I didn't notice a wedding ring on her finger. She's a soldier's widow. Been about 10 years now. Nat has raised their 15-year-old daughter pretty much alone." Sebastian wasn't one to gossip himself, but he didn't consider this story to fall under that category. "Has raised their 15-year-old daughter pretty much alone." Sebastian wasn't one to gossip himself, but he didn't consider this story to fall under that category. Everyone knew about the tragic loss and Natalie's perseverance. Erica's eyes widened, and she brought a hand to her chest. "Oh, no. I had no idea. I'll make sure not to bring it up during book club." "Ah, the book club. You've been invited?" "Yeah, you've heard of it?" "Of course. The book club is an institution around here. Those ladies have been getting together and reading books for years. You know, this spring, they put together a fundraiser to save the elementary after-school reading program." "Very noble," Erica commented. "Do you happen to know if the bus route goes out to Natalie's house?" "That's where we're supposed to meet." "I'm not sure about that," Sebastian admitted. "But I have to ask, why don't you drive?" Erica got up out of her seat, lifting the lid of the grill and flipping the burgers. Sebastian watched her, waiting. He had a feeling that she was taking her time with tending to the burgers, probably to avoid answering his question. He wouldn't push it if she told him to back off, but he knew that sometimes people needed to talk about their problems, and he'd be happy to listen. Returning to her seat, she kept her eyes down, looking at her fingers as she twisted them together anxiously. "Listen, Erica, I didn't mean to pry dash." "No," she interrupted, her eyes finally meeting his own once again. "It's okay. I just haven't talked about it much." Sebastian reached out and placed a hand on top of her fingers, stilling them. "Whatever it is, talking might help." She gave him a small, slightly sad smile. It was 6 months ago, and in Michigan there was snow on the ground. A couple inches of it. But the roads had been plowed, so I thought. She swallowed hard, and he gave her fingers a squeeze. "I've been driving on icy roads every winter since I turned 16, and I've never had a problem, but this time was different. I was coming up to a stoplight, and I tried to stop, I really did, but my car just didn't. Instead, it slid straight into the intersection, right into the side of another car." Sebastian winced. "That sounds bad." "It was horrible. I hurt my back pretty bad, and it still acts up most days, but the worst part was the woman in the other car." Tears swam in Erica's eyes, and his stomach knotted into a fist. He really didn't like to see her so upset. Vanessa Bryant is her name. A 22-year-old grad student. She was paralyzed in the accident. Erica suddenly got up again, pulling her hand out from under his. She ducked her head so that he couldn't see her face, and returned to the grill, taking the burgers off and putting them on a platter. This time Sebastian followed her. She turned off the burners on the grill and turned around, jolting when she saw him right behind her. The air between them felt thick with tension, and he put his hands on her shoulders. "Hey, you know the accident wasn't your fault, right? Then why do I feel so guilty?" Sebastian shrugged. "Human nature. But it's still not your fault." Erica shook her head. "I wish I could believe that so easily. I can't even bring myself to drive a car again. How about I help you with that?" "I don't know. I've tried to work up the courage, but the idea of getting back behind the wheel is just too nerve-wracking." "You know what you need? A stress-free situation, one where you couldn't possibly crash into anything or anyone. I own a plot of land on the north end of town, just flat grass. How about I take you there? You can try driving my truck, see how you feel." "You'd do that for me?" "Of course." Sebastian wasn't sure why, but he felt a connection to this woman. He'd do whatever he could to help her. "Thanks," she said. "I'm glad I found a friend like you." "Me too. Now, how about we eat dinner before those burgers get cold?" "Let's do it." Erica went into the apartment to get some buns and drinks, so Sebastian sat back down to wait for her. He didn't tell her, but he hoped that one day she'd come to think of him as more than a friend. Days later, Erica was sitting behind the wheel of Sebastian's truck, her hands shaky as she put the key in the ignition. She tried to tell herself that she was fine. It had been 19 years since she got her driver's license, and she'd driven thousands of times. So why couldn't she get past the one time it had gone wrong? Her heart was racing, and her grip on the steering wheel was so tight her knuckles were white. She knew the next steps in this process: foot on the brake, put the truck in drive, and accelerate. It was simple. Just as Sebastian said, there was no one here to collide with. But in her mind, she was reliving the last time she was behind the wheel. Her chest felt tight as the panic that she'd felt that day resurfaced. She'd seen herself sliding toward the car and kept mashing on the brake. It did no good, and the helplessness combined with the fear just before she hit the young girl. She'd never really let go of those emotions, she realized. "Take your time," Sebastian said from beside her. Erica glanced over and saw the patient look in his eyes. He was completely relaxed in his seat, with his elbow hanging out the open window. "Don't rush yourself." Erica let out a humorless laugh. "I feel so silly, freaking out like this." "Don't be so hard on yourself. You've been through a trauma." There was something calming about Sebastian's voice, and she let that feeling wash over her. Taking a deep breath, she tried to stifle her panic. "I can do this." Trying to cling to that belief, she made herself put the truck in gear. For a moment, she thought that she was going to be okay, but then the truck started to roll forward. Her throat constricted as a cold terror shot through her. They'd only moved forward a couple of feet when she slammed on the brakes, sending both of their bodies forward until the seatbelts tightened. "Whoa." Sebastian braced himself with a hand on the dashboard. "You okay?" No, she wasn't. She put the truck in park, feeling mortified. Covering her face with her hands, Erica struggled to catch her breath, but with each pull of air into her lungs, she felt more and more like she was suffocating. Her blood rushed in her ears, and she couldn't believe this was happening in front of Sebastian. Her mind was a jumble of incoherent thoughts, and she struggled to sort them out. The click of Sebastian unbuckling his seatbelt was followed by a pair of strong arms wrapping around her. Erica raised her head and saw that his brow was drawn down as he looked at her with concern. Taking a hold of her hand, he placed it on his own chest as he took deep breaths in and out. "Mimic my breathing. Just focus on that. In and out. You can do it." She listened to his words, feeling the warm affection blooming in her chest. There was no room in her heart for worry about her trust issues right now. All she could focus on was her breathing. She closed her eyes and everything fell away other than her and Sebastian. It took several long minutes, during which he held her and provided a solid comfort that she needed so desperately, but eventually her breathing evened out, matching his own. When she opened her eyes again, he was still watching her. Feeling bold, she tilted her head and parted her lips. A second later, Sebastian swooped in and pressed his mouth to hers. There was an explosion of sensation at the contact, and Erica melted into his embrace. She forgot about her embarrassment and disappointment at her own reaction to driving for a moment. There was only him. Her confidence soared, and she felt like she could accomplish anything.
Indulge in a timeless tale of love and new beginnings with this free romance. Book by Molly Summers. Get your copy free at romancereader.com/prequel.